The Trial of Magneto continues as the Avengers visit Krakoa to take home the body of Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, mysteriously murdered at the Hellfire Gala. Magneto remains the prime suspect, but the question remains, could it really be him? And is Wanda even dead? Today I'll answer, what is going on with Mag's daddy? My theory for huge changes to the Five just in time for X-Men Inferno, who did kill Wanda, theories and predictions for what's to come, not only in Trial of Magneto, but in Inferno and X-Men comics throughout the remainder of the year. Hey everybody, welcome to Krakin Krakoa. I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. If you like the Comic Book Herald YouTube channel, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting with theories of your own. I want to hear them all, and it definitely helps the channel find new people. Casual Krakoas, where I do live streams every Wednesday after the comics, usually happen on Wednesdays, but not today. Not today. There will be no Casual Krakoa if you're listening to this on the Wednesday Trial of Magneto number 2 came out, which is September 15th. If you are not, carry on. Casual Krakoas will return. Spoilers for the discussed comic will follow. Writer Leah Williams, artist Lucas Werneck, colors Edgar Delgado, letters by Clayton Cowles. So the Avengers come to collect Wanda's body, right? And they come in peace, essentially. There are no accusations. We don't kick off with the big Avengers vs. X-Men brouhaha, at least not right off the bat, okay? The X-Men roster shows up, and they're giving the Avengers a tour of Krakoa. And everything there is going fine, except nobody thinks to protect the state secret of mutant resurrection. It's easy to forget because it's been such a commonplace thing since House of X, but resurrection is still technically a secret. Now, Jerry Duggan, Pepe Larraz, Marty Gracia, their run on X-Men right now is doing some interesting exploration of this quote-unquote secret getting out of the bag, but I really have to continue wondering how much mutant kind, particularly the Professor and Moira, really even care at this point. Like, they are not protecting the secret of mutant resurrection very well at all. In order to get out of this one, for the Avengers, Emma Frost sets up her and the Cuckoos sunbathing as a telepathic screen that the Avengers see, which is not the first time Emma has used her smoking bod as a distraction. It would actually be like several dozen times that has happened. Now, as this is all happening, we get another cutaway to the magical realm where Wanda is residing in a mysterious state of limbo. Okay, now we saw it during the end of the Hellfire Gala. We saw Wanda Maximoff showed up to talk to her dad, Magneto. They had a nice touching conversation in the Al Ewing written sword, and then Wanda's body was found murdered at the end of X Factor, okay? And what we're getting is something happening here where Wanda is residing in, again, a mysterious state of magical limbo. Now, the way Williams is leaning into Wanda's magical abilities and what is described here as a supernatural death definitely has me doubting my theory that Mystique could be responsible for Wanda's death while taking the form of Magneto, right? Every indication is it's someone heavily involved with magic, which on the X-Men side leaves us with the likes of, I don't know, Illyana Rasputin, which, what would her motive be? Or somebody like an Amanda Sefton, which, not a character we touched here in a minute, or given the cloak, which so prominently wears in Excalibur, where Big Daddy Apocalypse, has been teaching him magic, or taught him magic rather. What about Richter from the pages of Excalibur, right? We're frequently teased with this cloaked figure, somebody who knows magic, which Richter would fit the bill, and Richter lost his powers pretty famously in Decimation because of Scarlet Witch. Could we be looking at Richter as the murderer of Wanda, the original murderer? I kind of think we are. I kind of think it's Richter. I kind of think that's the character that nobody's talking about, nobody's touched on here, and a character that has some relevance to the Lee Williams written X Factor run with his relationship with Shatterstar. Mark my words, it may well be Richter. That's my new prediction. I think it's Richter. To me, the most interesting development in the issue is how wholeheartedly Hope Summers stands up to Charles Xavier, even as she's aiding him in a mental excavation of Magneto's secrets, as Charlie worries his dear pal has killed his own daughter. As the de facto leader of the Five with the Omega level power set that makes the resurrection process tick, Hope Summers has tremendous value and power on Krakoa, as well as incalculable cultural significance to a mutant nation that holds up the Five as these, sacred entities. And Hope has had enough of Charles' shortcuts and personal violations in the name of utilitarian greater good. We've seen the Five's disconnect from the Quiet Council building for a while now, primarily in the pages of the Lee Williams written X Factor, but also most recently in Vita Ayala and Rod Reis's New Mutants number 21, where the Five more or less formally assert their power and their intent to resurrect certain dupes the Quiet Council has deemed too risky or too inconvenient, right? Like Gabby Kinney, Madeline Pryor, and Evan Sabaner, aka Kid Apocalypse. Now, as rebellion brews here, and the cracks in Krakoa, widen, heading into Inferno, the Jonathan Hickman written big event, these acts of formal dissatisfaction are not an accident. We are seeing the Quiet Council and their sort of control of Krakoa break apart. In the midst of the Avengers' visit, Hope wakes up Magneto from his totally not psychic torture and demands he prevent the Avengers make it to Wanda's body. This is clearly against the wishes of Professor X and clearly an act of rebellion, basically sicking a rabid Magneto on the island. Hope appears to psychically transfer her rationale to Magneto here as well, so he understands why the actions that she is recommending are necessary, so that he understands for her purposes why she would want to protect Wanda's body as opposed to just his general rationale, which is of course that, or seemingly, he hasn't exactly laid it out, but that he wants to protect his long-lost daughter. So Magneto then proceeds to go full Silver Age villain on the X-Men, X-Factor, and Avengers, threatening to kill Northstar's husband Kyle, and generally acting entirely unlike the Magneto we've seen throughout this entire era of X-Men comics. Magneto is not just beloved, he's the hero of Krakoa, and for him to lash out like this, pure fury and vengeance, to me it feels like a clear indicator that either one, it's not him, this isn't really Magneto and it's his clone Joseph, or two, more likely, he is literally mad with grief over losing Wanda. In an effort to continue distracting the Avengers from Wanda's body, Magneto deliriously declares that he murdered her, okay? He straight up says it in what is very clearly a lie and an attempted decoy. It has never seemed likely that Magneto was actually the murderer of the story, but here it's all but sealed that he couldn't have done it. He's just too wrought with rage the way he's clearly trying to distract the Avengers, and frankly, he's way too emotionally invested. I do think it is plausible and viable that Magneto would continue to view Wanda as his daughter, having looked at her that way for a number of years, despite the fact that much like most mutant dads that we know, he's a very, very bad father. Let me know in the comments here, examples of good mutant dads. Would love to hear more about that. Right after Magneto's admission of murder, the Scarlet Witch herself flies in, seemingly alive and well. Now, although we know Wanda is floating in a magical realm and certainly coming back, okay, there's no way she's actually dead, there's reason to believe this isn't actually Wanda, and I'd argue we probably know exactly who it is. As Wanda soars overhead, Williams and Werneck cut to Mystique hiding in the bushes. This is the first confirmation of Mystique's role in any of this, and while the initial implication is that she's taking Magneto's form and making him look guilty, not to mention stealing a Cerebro helmet, which she would presumably need to bring Destiny back, she's now gleefully watching from the sidelines. I do think the truth here is potentially more complicated and intriguing, because I don't think that's actually Wanda. I think it's Hope Summers, leveraging Mystique's shape-shifting powers and pretending to be the Scarlet Witch in order to retain the real Wanda's body. Now, why would Hope do this? Why would she put on this act? Well, maybe she's always had a thing for Paul Bettany, right? That's one possible reason. But honestly, I think the bigger reason is Hope knows Magneto didn't do this. She wants to get to the truth of the investigation, and she's absolutely had it with Professor X's poor leadership and clear poor decision-making. I think Hope would vote in favor of the Five resurrecting Wanda back as a mutant, or at least trying. And I think all of this means Professor X and the Quiet Council has effectively lost the Five. The future of Krakoa's resurrection under this leadership may not be sustainable at all. And that's before you consider an alliance with Mystique and the fact that Hope may already very much be on board with her desire to resurrect Destiny. Heading into Inferno, I'd imagine Mystique would need a new mutant group like the Five in order to manufacture her own version of mutant resurrection for her wife Destiny, but why not take the simpler route and simply add the actual Five to your alliance? It's much faster. I was initially fairly cool on the second issue of this 5-issue event, but honestly, the more I dig in, the more potential I love. I also greatly appreciate how Leah Williams is basically the first and most significant writer to really deal with the Five and give them a role as characters beyond the central plot mechanic of resurrection. Ultimately, I think the whole fighting the Avengers thing is fairly irrelevant in this issue, in the second issue of the event. I mean, I guess I'm here for Janet Van Dyne getting some 84 Secret Wars flashbacks by socking Magneto in the jaw, but other than that, it wasn't that exciting. Nonetheless, I remain really curious about the plans for Wanda, magic, and possible mutant resurrection moving forward, especially now as we spin into this intriguing landscape where Inferno is going to launch in a couple weeks, and then we're going to have a weird couple months where Trial of Magneto and Inferno are going on at the same time. How are they going to intersect and overlap and work together as stories? I will be very curious to see. The Krakoan for Trial of Magneto number 3 reads, "How are you here?" which of course seems like the major question to be asking about Wanda Maximoff, or the Great Pretender, if you will. You can find reading orders for all these X-Men comics over on comicbookherald.com. You can find ways to support the site and my work on patreon.com/comicbookherald. All support is greatly, greatly appreciated. Thanks in particular to those of you in the mysterious benefactors tier. Thank you, Jesse W., Megan Getman, Cole Weathers, Martin Lopez, Brent Bowser, Professor X3769, Richard Renz, Verisimilitude, Terranort, Ed Mackey, Glide to Glide, Pinball Drew, Mike Solomons, Matt Mahoney, John Samander, and a handful of others who I'm missing but will be added for the next video. I'm Dave. You can find my stuff at comicbookherald.com, at comicbookherald, pretty much anywhere on social. The Krakin Krakoa coming soon. I think it's going to be this coming Monday is going to be my Hickman's full X-Men run in review. All right, I did some analysis on the entire X-Men series written by Jonathan Hickman, art primarily by Lionel Francis Yu, and I think it's a good one. It's a bit long, though, so check it out if you want a re-examination of that X-Men run. Otherwise, subscribe, like, comment, all that fun stuff helps me out. Thanks for listening, and as always, enjoy the comics.